Hello and welcome to another SkaredCast video. Today we start the unit by unit series where I discuss every single unit in the new Drukhari Codex. Now I've been a Drukhari player since a very long time, 3rd edition, and I've seen the Dark Eldar turn into the Drukhari that they are today. Now of course this is a series that I've done since back in the day. And since the new Codex release happened, it is time to take a look at the Drukhari, unit by unit. The first one we're going to look at today, the Archon. Let's begin.
The Dark Kin.
The Archon. The Dark Kin. I'm Skari, your grateful host. Welcome to another unit by unit series. For anybody who's brand new, this is a series that I do that breaks down every single unit in the Drukhari Codex when it comes out. Now, it's divided into 2 sections per video. The first is the lore, the story, the build-up of who the Archons are, what they represent in Drukhari society, in the Dark City, and Comora. And the second part is talking about their stats, abilities, and potentially a couple of cool combos that I like to use on the tabletop. So I hope this acts as an inspiration to you, the upcoming Archon, Succubus, or Homunculus in your journey to real space raiding and carving out your own little empire in the Dark City. Now, sadly, this codex has a lot of generic lore, so in order to sort of break down the specific lore, who the Archons are, I'm going to be reading out of the 8th edition codex, which is interesting to say the least. However, I do find it a lot more elaborative when it comes to who they are. So with that, let's dive in. The Archons of the Drukhari Cabals are true monarchs of Comora. They sit at the pinnacle of the pyramid, the apex of the hierarchy that controls the Twilight domain. Each wields influence enough to collapse portions of real space, stall an imperial crusade, or steal away the populations of entire planets. Though a Cabal's overlord is always a terrifying opponent to face in battle, they have attained their lofty heights not merely through prowess in the arts of war or brute suppression of the weak, but through consistently emerging victorious in the most convoluted contests of all. The game of intrigue at the heart of the Dark City, sometimes known as the Thilian ai Kelerthril, or the Path of Shards. Only the most ingenious survive long enough to kill their way to the top. Both in word and deed, each Archon is as poisonous as a serpent, their mind as labyrinthine as the darkest reaches of the webway. Such traits are necessary, for to sit at the very peak of power is to make oneself a prominent target indeed. Though the Archons are conceited megalomaniacs, certain of their own superiority, they will retain rulership only for as long as they can stave off the coups and assassination attempts of their rivals and Dracon lieutenants. Placing even a single foot wrong in the upper echelons of the Dark City will inevitably lead to a fatal fall. Because of this, Archons have an uncanny ability to predict the schemes of others and take cold delight in turning the traps laid out before them upon their heads. Despite the elaborate network of allegiances within the Dark City, the overlords of the Cabals run rings around those who seek to beat them at their deadly game. The endless ambition of the underlings keep their paranoia razor sharp, and hence it is at the business of treachery that the Archons truly excel. Their strategies stretch across the millennia, wheels turning within wheels as century-old ploys finally come into fruition. Some of the Lords of Twilight, who govern from the highest spires of Comra, even claim to have seized their thrones in the times before the fall. These elder Archons look upon the rest of their race as squabbling children, and do not suffer those fools gladly. A single syllable out of place may rouse an Archon's deadly wrath, and in matters of Cabal hierarchy, the Archons will seek solutions that work to the detriment of all other parties purely out of spite. Reveling in the depths of the abyss always has a cost. Over the years in which they have clawed their way up the precipice of power, the Archons of the Drukhari have become something altogether more otherworldly. They have fed upon the pain of others for so long that it takes true atrocity to invigorate them. An Archon regularly leads full-scale planetary raids, for drinking in wholesale excruciation is the only way they can properly rejuvenate. Thousands of slaves are sacrificed before the oldest Archons each night, and still this might not be enough to grant them a youthful sheen. Hence, elder Archons sometimes cover their black-veined visages with masks, some stylized and beautiful, some fashioned from the flayed faces of rivals whose schemes were not as foolproof as they liked to think. Before going into battle, an Archon will visit their weapon museum, savoring the process of selection as they choose between the most arcane and lethal of all the technologies of Comra. Some Archons choose a different array of armaments for each engagement, indulging in the variety at their disposal. Others have used the same tools of slaughter for years, decades, or even centuries, and continually find new ways to induce suffering with their favored implements. One such weapon, the Huskblade, is a favorite of many Archons, for it evaporates the internal fluids of those it slices, causing their flesh to shrivel and crumble to dust in a most spectacular fashion. Other more esoteric items are also taken to war by Archons, such as soul traps, whip-like agonizers, force fields that shroud the wearer in tendrils of darkness. Thus accounted, the Archon strides haughtily unto the battlefield, eyeing their enemies with utter disdain. Their most favored retainers and pets, each of whom specializes in bestowing the gift of death in its own fashion, accompany the Archon, butchering those to whom they are directed to by their master. Even the least of a Cabal's Archons can move like the wind, seeming almost to vanish from sight, and reappear again when their blade has done its bloody work. Few mortal warriors have set their eyes upon an Archon and still keep them within their sockets. Yes, my pretties. So I hope you enjoyed the story of our Archons, who they are in the Dark City. Now, of course, all, thanks to GW for, writing such cool stuff, and all credits where credit is due. I did not write that piece. But let's dive into the Archons themselves, who they are, what they are, some units, some abilities, their statistics, special rules, and things like that. So let's dive in. So the Drukhari Codex has a variety of different cool rules. The Archon itself is not one of the most expensive characters in the 40th millennia. He is only 4 power, which is very, very good in sort of crusade rules, and he only comes in at 65 points, which is a very good way to have a very cheap Archon. You can give him like a power sword or a venom blade, so he's good at close combat. He's like a toolkit style character in a Warhammer 40,000 game. Now, he does have a movement of 8. He has weapon skill, ballistic skill of 2. He has strength and toughness 3, like most elves you're going to find, or most Eldari in the faction. So he's not the toughest in terms of toughness, or strongest in terms of strength. He does have 5 wounds, which is quite decent for a not tough character, and he does have 5 attacks in close combat, with a high leadership of 9 and a save of a 4+, which can be quite handy against small arms fire. He is equipped standard with a splinter pistol and a power sword, which is not bad. Power sword +1 to your strength and AP -3, so can be quite good at taking out a variety of different opponents. Now, this model's sword can be replaced by an agonizer, a husk blade, or a venom blade. Now, the agonizer is usually a whip, or it can be sort of like a claw as well. It has the poison special rule, so it can wound tough targets on a set value. Very, very good if you're playing a lot of Tyranids or Demon Princes or high toughness targets that are usually toughness 5 or more. If not, the power sword is normally more efficient. It also can have a husk blade, which does have 2 damage. So the husk blade is great against multiple damage creatures or creatures that have a ignore damage mechanic, which means that they'd have to roll more dice to hope that they don't just die. You can give them a venom blade. Historically, I do love the venom blade because it wounds on 2s, which is fantastic. However, it only has an AP of 1, so a lot of the times your opponent will be making their armor saves quite efficiently against it. In terms of abilities, the Archon does have the 2 abilities that are the standard to most, if not all, Drukhari units, which is Blade Artists. So when he rolls a 6 to wound, it'll turn its close combat attack will be an extra AP. So that's really good for something like the Venom Blade, which can then be AP2, or something like an Agonizer that becomes AP4, and the Power Sword as well. Also, Power from Pain, which is a special rule for all Drukhari. Make sure you check out the full review that I did of the Drukhari Codex, where we go over Power from Pain. But it gives the Archon access to +1 hit in combat, advance in charge, and then an invulnerable save that, in case he fails a Shadow Field save, he can then use in an emergency. He does have the rule Overlord. It is an aura that gives all core units and incubi, Cabal core units and incubi, within 6 inches of him, reroll 1s to hit, and a Shadow Field, which is a 2+ invulnerable save that cannot be rerolled, and you have to essentially roll them, and as soon as he fails it, it's done for the rest of the game. It's a very fickle defensive measure, and one that I've come to love and hate over the years. He does have Eldari, Drukhari, Cabal keywords. He's an infantry character and an Archon. Now, the Archon is a very versatile character. There are lots of warlord traits and relics and cabals that you can bring them with. It also depends on whether you bring them in a real space raid detachment or regular detachment, because he then changes that aura to affect multiple units that are not just himself, like Blades for Hire, or even core units like Witches, and even Coven units if he's in a real space raid detachment. You can upgrade him to a Master Archon, which gives him a Fight Twice ability and access to some other cool relics and psychic powers. My favorite build for an Archon is an Archon with a Husk Blade and a Blast Pistol that is upgraded to having the Warlord trait Hatred Eternal, so he can reroll everything, basically to wound and to hit, or everything to wound, sorry. And the Husk Blade is upgraded into a relic called the Jinn Blade. Now, the Jinn Blade is definitely one of my favorites. It is like a super Husk Blade that is 3 straight damage. It's hit and wounds. He rerolls hits and wounds. 3 straight damage, AP3. and strength 4, so +1 to his strength. So he will go around and kill even the toughest targets by himself, being at a cheap cost of 75 points, 90 if you make him a Master Archon. The Archon itself should be at the center of every well-organized real space raid. So let me know what you think. Do you like the Archon? Do you prefer succubuses or homunculuses? And I hope you stay tuned, because I will be putting up one of these videos for every single unit in the Drukhari Codex and more. So if you like the content, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a video. Click that notification bell. If you'd like to support what I do here on the channel, check me out on Patreon and join the Denizen community of international global gamers, where you get access to our Discord, exclusive videos every week, and more awesome content. I've been Skari, your grateful host, signing off until next time. And until then, the Dark Kin. Bye, everybody.